Hello, everybody. Welcome to the conference. Delighted you could be with us. My name is Kristian Jack. You may know me from different aspects of television and covering soccer in Canada for probably around 20 years now. I'm really excited about this. We're going to be having a good hour, a good fun chat with my friends Richard and Peyvand. We're going to get to them in a second, and I'm going to let them come on, introduce themselves, and talk to you about what their experts is. But of course, the title of the panel today, Behind the Bench, the Future of Recruitment, Connecting College, University, and Pro Coaches with Aspiring Players using data analytics. I'll get it out in a second. But it is something that is important. Analytics is certainly something that is really coming into the pro game. We know all across the university game as well, and in many different factors. So I think it's going to be a really good, interesting chat in terms of what's good, what's not good, how we incorporate it, how we view players because of it, and what, more importantly, players want now in terms of their analysis as well. So let me get into my panelists today. Let's start with Richard. Hey, Richard, good to see you. Maybe you can just talk to our attendees about your background and why you're in this discussion with us today.
All right, good to be here. Thank you. So my name is Richard Bucciarelli. I am one of the directors of the National Soccer Coaches Association of Canada. So we're helping to put on these webinars and attract, awesome speakers like the ones we have here. And in addition to that, I'm a fitness coach and sports scientist. I've worked more or less exclusively in soccer. I run a business that does fitness training and testing for soccer players. I've worked at some of the higher levels in the game, including national teams programs and professional, as well as in the university game. And I'm also a university lecturer and researcher working on finishing up a PhD. So I'm kind of involved in the game from many different angles and really as a sports scientist and also as a coach and was a player back in the day as well. So and actually, I should mention now I am the chief sports scientist with Best Athletes. I know, Peyvand and we will speak a little bit about Best Athletes and what we're doing there. So I've been with them more or less since the inception about a year and a half ago, and very excited about that work as well.
Yeah, Best Athletes has been terrific already starting. It's what bonds all three of us. I've done some work for them as well. And that brings me next to my next guest. Peyvand, great to see you again, my friend. Great to have you on. I know Richard brings a ton of knowledge in a lot of different areas as well, as do you. Maybe you can just share with our guests here today your background and why you're here to talk about what you talk about today.
Yeah, thanks, Kristian and Rich. Appreciate you guys inviting me to this. I am Peyvand Mossavat. Everybody knows me as coach, former player, played Canadian system, and back in the days in the USL and in the indoor league, and transitioned over to coaching over the years. I've been TD technical director with numerous clubs within the city. I started coaching at the university level back in 2004. I started with Ryerson, took on a program from sort of scratch, program that had not success in sort of their history. And most recently was at Ontario Tech for 8 years, built a program there from scratch. So been involved at the collegiate level and obviously with the provincial team. I've spent quite a few years with the National Training Center with Brian, and I've had the pleasure and honor to coach many of the girls that are on the sort of Canadian national program right now, from U15s all the way to the current senior team. I've also coached the Canadian team at the World University Games in the last 3 cycles. And in 2015 had the best finish. We lost the medal game to Japan at that point. So spent a lot of time obviously coaching. Spent a lot of time on the recruitment side. The nature of my recruiting was, whether fortunately or unfortunately, I was in programs that were startup programs. And so you have to think outside the box in terms of how you go about your recruitment. And we have quite a few, we've had, I could honestly say from recruitment perspective, we were very successful, and most recently joined Best Athletes with Rich and a few other coaches who wanted to try to change the sort of the recruitment landscape, if you may, right? To be able to provide more data, more information for coaches who are recruiting athletes, and how could we help those? So that's how we kind of got behind Best Athletes, and it's been fantastic and it's been great. And as you mentioned, that's what brought us together. And so looking forward to working with them and also, provide some info for athletes.
It will be the three of us talking amongst ourselves here, but we're talking to you as well. We want you to be involved in this scenario. I'm sure there's nobody new in this world to Zoom today. We've all done Zooms and we're all doing them on a daily basis, unfortunately. One day, guys, we will all be back together, I promise. But while you're in the chat, please put in some questions. There's a Q&A box down there. You can type your questions in. There will be different topics that we get to today. I don't simply just want to leave all the Q&A to the end. I want you to be involved in the conversation. If there's a question that comes in and I know a topic's coming up, I might just save it a little bit. But please, as the conversation evolves, please be involved and use that kind of format for us as we have a chat today on this different, what we think is really important, a really important element here. Richard, let me turn to you. And Peyvand mentioned it, this changing landscape of the way that recruitment's happening, not only just in Canada, but all around the game, but specifically here in your own experience. We're going to get into the dimensions of analytics shortly and what's important in that. But what have you noticed, particularly in those changes over the last few years now, that has allowed you to come on and talk about it more?
That's a good question. And I guess maybe I've got a unique perspective because I played university soccer in the early 2000s in Canada. And at that time, there was no such thing as recruitment. Basically, each school would have had an open tryout, walk-on tryout, you can call it that, and the best players from that tryout made the team. My last year playing university soccer was 2004, and a gentleman named Paul James became the head coach at York University where I was playing, and he was maybe one of the first full-time coaches at the time. Typically before that, you had a lot of coaches who were a faculty member at the school, and again, didn't really recruit. They might have been in contact with players and stuff, but it didn't really happen a lot. And from that point onward, then you started to see coaches traveling, both in Ontario, outside of Ontario, to other provinces, and even to the States and other places to look for players, going to showcase tournaments, all these kinds of things. They all started to kind of come about, and Peyvand has lots of experience with this, but I can say, in the maybe late 1990s, when I was in high school, there were here and there was the Dallas Cup, there was a few tournaments that you try to get into with your team if you were trying to be recruited in the United States. But if you ended up playing university soccer in Canada, there really wasn't any recruitment going on at all. And so from that time, it's literally 20 years ago to now, Peyvand and I, we've worked together in university soccer for many years, and you can look across Canada, everybody's recruiting. Everybody is traveling, everybody's communicating with players, even as young as kind of the, almost the 8th or 9th grade. Sometimes you find out who they are and you keep track of them. So it went from not existing 20 years ago to being a critical way that a university coach is successful. I don't think you can be successful anymore without recruiting now. And I know maybe a little later in the discussion, I can speak a little bit about kind of the sports science side of that. But yeah, it's been a 180, I would say, in my experience, starting out as a player and now as a coach in the last 20 years.
And would you imagine, Peyvand, that's been pretty similar for yourself in terms of just the dramatic changes? And I guess the beneficiaries of this are those getting recruited, but also coaches like yourself, because I would imagine that if it's done properly, there's a lot more intel on players when you receive them that you can help them with.
No, absolutely. I think Richard touched on everything that pertains to that. But the reality of it is that the programs we went from this environment that, coaching at the collegiate level wasn't a profession, it was a passion. People were coaching because they were involved in football, and there was, some were volunteering and some were making, some expenses and stuff. And then from going away from that and it becoming a more professional environment with professional coaches and former players. And I look at in Ontario, just, the number of former players that are now involved in coaching professionally, or those who've been at some schools, for last 20, 30 years, et cetera, et cetera. So, the change in the coaching staff and people, coming in, we had more experience, they're more competitive. They brought that little bit of that competitiveness in. Even when we weren't full-time, those who came into the game and were more competitive, had a playing background and coaching background, and they created that competition of going out and looking for better players to recruit, to bring into their program. So that changed everything.
Thank you for watching this short preview video from the National Soccer Coaches Association of Canada. To see the full video, plus have access to hundreds of other coaching videos, blogs, webinars, and podcasts, plus free and discounted coach education courses and other soccer merchandise, plus to have exclusive access to register for all future NSCAC conventions, both live and online. Click on the link below to become a member of the NSCAC today. Also, please remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as your continued support allows us to continue to provide coach education and coach development resources to soccer coaches across Canada and worldwide. Thank you again for your continued support, and we look forward to seeing you at future NSCAC events.